think majority of us use Gemini in one way or another, and there's so many different ways to leverage it, so we definitely encourage it, but we also just want to get to know who you are, what you know. Using AI, that's a great thing, because those that are actually using AI, they know the capabilities and what AI is capable of doing and what it is not. It is a plus if you're using it, but if you're using it at the right time in the appropriate context. If you're using AI to answer the basic questions during an interview process, that's a problem.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today we have an episode. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. And occasionally you get a mic drop episode from Matt where he shares something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. Now, as a reminder, if you like the content that we share here on the show, make sure that you subscribe for more. All right, yeah, today it's a show. Is it an interview? Is it a roundtable? Is it kind of tactical? Is it slightly topical, trending-ish? I'm not really sure what to call it, but it's one thing that I have a feeling it's going to give a lot of people listening a lot of validation and hopefully some biz dev firepower as well. So for today, we have Lex and Vivien joining us to talk about this topic and what we're seeing right now and historically and all of the fun, the discussion that lies in between. So this mystery topic, Lex, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm going to kick it right back to you because I have a question. I know that you are actively hiring for a couple of roles for our team, marketing at Loxo right now. Vivien, I know you've been in the hiring process for several roles across our CSM function. So I'm wondering, what are you guys seeing? We have kind of a goal here in this conversation, but I want you to just paint the picture for me first of what are some of the high level things that you're noticing as you are sourcing specifically. We'll get into some of the later steps of the process down the road, but from a sourcing perspective, what are you noticing as you're walking through this hiring process?
Yeah, it's fun. I say fun, both kind of in like sick, twisted way. Like, is it fun? Is it sarcastic as I'm saying this? But also it is like, it's kind of fun to be like, oh my God, there's some amazing candidates out there. So yeah, we're hiring for 3 different roles in the marketing team. And this is anecdotal because it's based on 3 roles. And that's why we have Vivien here to round us out with a lot more experience with it. But seeing some very, very, very clear trends between the candidates who I've proactively sourced and brought through the interview process versus those who found the job posting on our careers page and applied to it. Both have great candidates, don't get me wrong, but we talk about this all the time. Like, we're all about data, metrics, conversion rates, all of that. There are very clear trends about the way I explained it to our leadership team yesterday. It's like for the sourced candidates, it's a pipeline for us because it's so like straight. Like if you do it properly, you're finding great candidates, but also they're probably ready to move or at that point where it might be a good fit for them to think about this versus I'm not reaching out to people who just started 2 weeks ago in their job, right? Like Viv, I know we've talked before, like, hey, just because they just started doesn't mean that they're not a fit, but I'm trying not to kill myself early on with this. And then you have the applied candidates. I didn't post to the major job boards. It's just on our careers page. So it's not as bad as it could be. But we're seeing a lot of candidates who check some of the boxes. They're good, but I don't want to say it's not the caliber of it, but just the level of like the wow factor of the candidates. Like the ones that you source, obviously you're just like, wow, I want to reach out to them versus some of the inbound. It's a stretch for someone, which is completely okay and what you want to see for some of the candidates. But that one is much more like a traditional funnel where you've got a very big top side of it, but then when you get to like, okay, who's qualified, that slims it down pretty quick. Of those who are qualified, who do I want to have a conversation with for the interview? That goes down even further. So I'm gonna stop right there. But like things that most recruiters are like, yeah, no shit, Sam, we know this is why people hire us, this is why we do it. But again, also for the in-house people or for biz dev, sometimes it's just a nice reminder of like, this is the reality of what it looks like.
I wonder how much of this is kind of just like human psychology on some level too, of people that you have found yourself or that you have some sort of stake in them working out? There's some element of like those are more exciting to you on some level. Is it, is it truly a quality thing, or is there some like bias in there somewhere? I don't know. I'm just curious about that from just like again, a human psychology perspective. Is someone who, is applying, are they revealing their hand and they're like a little bit less interesting to you as a result? I don't know. But that's just another factor that comes to mind for me when thinking through like this sourced versus applied, these two pipelines of candidates.
Yeah. Not too much for me, to be honest, because there have been a couple applied candidates. I'm just like, oh my God, like, I'm so glad that you did come in because we've had a great conversation. And then there's some on the side that I source. I'm just like, it's a wish list. Like, there's no way that some of these people, I'm not that invested in it. Like, I just want to take the chance with it.
Might as well take a big swing.
I think part of it is like, when you're a hiring manager and you get an applicant that is really great, you're not going to discriminate against them. You're actually really excited because then you're like, okay, they're going to be easier to actually get across the finish line because they have already expressed interest and they're great. So I don't know that there's bias. I mean, as humans, we're always biased, whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it or not. We have our biases and they seep into everything that we do and look at. But I think the struggle that we're seeing with applicants specifically is that the barrier to entry for sending a job application is so low. And that's why applications from a recruiting standpoint, they don't work that well anymore because people now know that you have to apply a million times over to get an interview to then eventually get a position. And like some of the numbers that we're seeing on LinkedIn posts out there are crazy. People need to submit 600 applications, 1,000 applications over the course of months to get 5 interviews and get 1 offer. That's crazy. That's worse than a recruiter needing to proactively source. And and this is something that we've talked about in an episode before, Sam. It was the like easy apply. Is that actually helping get high quality applicants, or is it making it so easy that wrong people are applying, and then there are some job boards that actually end up showing how many people have already applied for that role, and the greater that number, it actually ends up, and even if it's really bad quality candidates, like not a fit at all, does that actually then discourage the ones that would have taken the time to really craft and mold their CV, their resumes to that particular job because they are a good fit, but they think, if I'm interested in this role and I'm seeing that there are 60 other people that have applied for it, I'm sure you only apply if you're a good fit. That's not really the case because it's gotten so easy that people start to just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks as an applicant just because people need to find jobs. And so they're going to apply as many times as possible because it feels like they're increasing their odds. And so as a recruiter and hiring manager, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting the right people, because a lot of times people will, there's this advice that you should apply for roles that you're not qualified for. And so there's some truth to it. If you have the must-have experiences, and then apply for it. But if you, let's say you've been in HR all of your life and suddenly you want to apply for a marketing manager role, that's not going to happen.
This is an interesting point too, because we talk a lot about sourcing for growth titles, but I feel like that's something that only works really when you're sourcing for that specifically as a candidate applying to a growth role, when you're competing against people who have already been in that role or that function for much longer or have more direct experience. I can imagine that it's a little bit, that doesn't translate equally in some sense.
Yeah. There's 2 different thoughts I want to go down here. One is it a founding role in that type of position? So is it the first sales rep? Is it the first marketer? Is it the first engineer? Or is it they're the 10th? They've got other people that can help them. So there is a level of like, do you want somebody who can grow into that early on when you're trying to figure it out? So that's something that we're taking into account. Like all 3 of these roles are founding job function within this marketing part. So there's that side of it. And then, Vivien, what you were saying earlier about the conversion rates of applied, like how many roles someone has to apply to just to get an interview. Yeah, easy apply, like things like that, obviously we know are easier to add volume, the lower that conversion rate goes. But you would be surprised by the amount of what I just called checkbox application, checkbox applying to this role, where there were a couple different things that I did. They weren't gotchas or anything else. I just wanted to see what candidates would do when they're applying. So just the standard, add your resume, all of that. I had 5 different questions as part of the application. Those are required. And then I had a 6th question that was just like, share a little bit more about yourself. What's something that I didn't ask you that you think would be helpful for me to know? Optional, all of that. It was really interesting to see who did and didn't fill that out. I don't want to say that I weighted that heavily, but that did come into account when you do have a lot of qualified candidates. Like, that to me is like, does this person put forth the extra effort? So that was an interesting part, but had over 500 applicants between the 3 roles. I had 1 candidate cold call and cold text me, 0.2%, right? That's not checkbox applying. Guess who's really far along in the interview process? That candidate. So there's things that you can do still, even though you're applying. Like, this person applied for the role. Not like, you can go beyond the traditional, like, oh, well, I put my resume and I hope that I get the role. Like, you can be much more proactive with what you do.
How are you weighing, like, okay, someone sending you an email, someone sending you a LinkedIn DM after you post the role, someone's, texting you or finding some other way to get in touch with you. Do you take that into consideration in terms of like the amount of just, I guess, boldness and willingness that this candidate has to put themselves out there, or is all outreach the same to you?
Mm-hmm.
From a hiring manager's perspective, I'm curious.
Yeah, if they're qualified, if they're in the park, like, yes, I absolutely take that into account. There's some people who sent me DMs, sent me an email. They were kind of generic, but they weren't qualified for it. So it's like, that wouldn't be an extra thing, because it's just like multiplying by 0 to
Gotcha.
put lack of a better return.
Okay. I'm curious then, Sam, you and I just did an episode on referrals as kind of a path. Have you had anyone come through as a referral that you're talking to for any of these roles? And like, what's your experience been like with that?
Yeah, I've had a couple referrals. And interesting, I had one person that I sourced who was also a former peer of another candidate I'm talking to. So it's like a sourced referral. I don't know if you call it like a multiplier power or something else, but it worked out well. So a couple referrals came in, like they did apply, they referenced the person. I had a couple people, former peers of mine, that sent an email, DM, text, like, hey, you should talk to XYZ. I think they'd be a great fit. And with that, I don't know, it's taken me a while to realize this, but no one would be like, oh yeah, I'll do you a solid. Like I'll give them a look. I'll talk to them. But recruiter, we don't have a lot of time to do all that kind of stuff. And like, just pity interview, for lack of a better term. I don't want to lead someone on. I don't want to take something just because someone did this. So I always say, like, thank you so much for thinking of this. And then I follow up with a question, like, with our organization here, like, we truly aim for the 1% hire. So I ask them, I'm like, is this person truly 1%? And also, like, would you honestly hire this person again? Like, if you can answer yes to both those, I will talk to them all day. But about half of them were like, just like, maybe don't follow up with them. I'm like, perfect. I'm glad I asked. So it's a gut check where, yeah, it's, I don't know, a little bit of a screening, but it helped both sides, I think.
It reminds me of an episode we did previously on 37 Signals has their hell yeah metric, where they check in a year after making a hire. You know, okay, this person has had plenty of time to get adjusted. They're hopefully finding success in this role. Is it a hell yeah that I would hire this person again or not? So maybe we need to apply that metric to referrals as well. If it's not a hell yeah, then maybe don't refer this person.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I don't know. Like, Viv, what do you think? And what have you seen at the more macro lens, just between sourcing, referrals, inbound applicants that you didn't cover yet?
With referrals, I've gotten referrals as a recruiter, and I was actually seeking out referrals because another easy way to find candidates that I may just not have found is by reaching out to hiring managers that would have worked with that kind of person in the past, just to kind of like get referrals. And this is where, and I also did a lot of reference checks as a recruiter. So this was always interesting to kind of like get a different take on things. And very similar to what you were saying, it's like, it's very easy to do a referral, and it's in their best interest when they see there's a referral opportunity to do that, because that strengthens their own network with that particular candidate that they already have a relationship with. And so it does make sense to do some kind of gut check, because especially like if you have a big network that would refer a lot of people to you, then you find yourself in that category of like, well, is this actually a good referral? Can I trust you by you saying that, or do I need to even do that gut check? And so that one is a good one to do. In terms of like sourcing versus applied, I've done a couple of interviews for our CS team, and I wasn't doing the one that actually handled the applicants and initial interviews and sourcing. So I was more in like the second, third, and final round stages. And so whenever the candidates got to me, I didn't know how they even found Loxo and how that even came to be. And granted, it's only like 10 interviews or so. So it's not a big data set, but the pattern has been that applicants didn't end up being that great once we actually had a conversation with them. But the ones that were sourced or were a solid referral, like a trustworthy referral, those usually ended up getting like final round and even potentially an offer. So the quality is just different. And one of our recent hires, the interesting thing about that one was that this particular person never would have found us. Like, yes, Loxo, we got a big investment, there was a PR release and all that fun stuff, but in reality, Loxo is nowhere near what like Facebook or Google is. And so when applicants are actually applying, especially top applicants, they are going to apply to the top companies. And a lot of times applicants don't know how to source for startups where they could thrive. And so branding wise, Google and Facebook and Amazon, they were known for very innovative working spaces where they were encouraging top players to come, and they were actually thriving there. And they're slowly out of that phase and moving somewhere else where new startups can kind of like fill that space and be that like fun work environment where people just really can roll up their sleeves and shine and get really involved in really exciting projects where they get to be really creative and have a little bit more freedom to do whatever they want to do. But those, like that next generation of those companies is not known yet. And so people wouldn't necessarily know how to find Loxo and then apply. I happened to get lucky because I was already in recruiting. I was following our CEO, Matt, on LinkedIn. So when I saw that Loxo was looking, I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. Let me check this out. And the rest is history. And so I proactively reached out. I didn't even like really apply. I just went straight into LinkedIn DMs. And it was a fairly quick process. And I think this is where, as a company, if you are not well known within the industry, you're not Fortune 500, and even Fortune 500, there are so many companies that if I look them up, I'd be like, I have no idea what the heck they're doing. So I would even venture to say Fortune 100, maybe. If you're not in that, you don't have that brand recognition, people are not going to look for you. And with those smaller companies, what I've noticed as a recruiter is they don't know what the true job title is of that role, especially if it's a founding role. If they were just doing a replacement, then they know what the role title is, and then that application will surface and things like that. But if it's a smaller company, it's a founding role, they have a set of responsibilities, and sometimes they don't know what is the true title of that particular role out in the market. So they won't actually advertise it correctly just because they don't know. And they haven't done the research, and depending on the recruiter that they end up working with, they can either guide them and tell them, hey, this is actually the true name of the position, this is what you're really looking at. And this is where it kind of gets a little bit interesting. So if you are not Coca-Cola, Facebook, like, I don't know, like Bank of America, like companies like that, then you're going to have to do some sourcing just to put yourself out there, because candidates are not going to find you. And candidates don't always want to apply to companies that they've never heard of because they don't have an impression. They would have to do a little bit more research. Unless they are desperate in need of a job, then they're applying to anything that fits. So this is a little bit of like something that then guides candidates and the quality of applicants that you get through. So sourcing still makes sense, just so that you can even get like an idea of the ideal candidate. If they're not applying, why are they not applying, and what would it take to actually attract them through an application? And the only way to find out is to actually talk to them. And if they're not naturally finding you, you have to go find them. And if you want the top 1% players, you have to go out and find them and catch them. They're being chased by other people. You got to catch them all like Pokemons, you know?
That brings up a question that I have for both of you guys, which is, earlier you talked about interviewing, Vivien, in terms of the noticing a quality difference. And I know that this is kind of like a vague question, but I'm curious, quality, what does that mean? Is that culture fit? Is that skills? What are you discovering in those interviews? And Sam, maybe you can speak to this as well in the interviews that you've had so far. I know we're early stages, but what is that quality difference? Is it just, hey, do I see myself vibing with this person on a culture level? Do I feel like they would fit here? Or is it like truly a skills thing? I'm just curious about how qualitative versus quantitative that quality metric is.
So by the time that they get to me, they already have the basic qualifications, the must-haves for the job. Otherwise, we wouldn't have bothered wasting our time. And this isn't like to be mean or anything like that, but kind of like what you already touched on, Sam, there's no point in interviewing somebody that genuinely isn't the right fit and doesn't have the basic qualifications for the role that we just genuinely need. And there are certain things that we can invest and upskill in, and there's other things that just really are must-haves that you need to have. So by the time that the interviews get to me, I'm mainly looking for culture fit and would they actually thrive in the role. I've been in the role, so I know what it takes and what to kind of like look out for. And there's a couple of different things. We're fully remote, so there's a level of resourcefulness and initiative that people need to have. And so I kind of try to figure out, like, what is their history of doing these things? Are they proactive? Are they resourceful? Can they kind of like freestyle it and figure it out within the basic parameters of the role? Can they figure it out, or do they need a lot of hand holding? Because depending on what it is and depending on the kind of company that you are working in and applying for, there's either going to be a lot of structure processes where there is a lot of hand-holding directly or indirectly, or it's, hey, these are the basic requirements, but then you get to be creative within those requirements of how you actually deliver that. And with Loxo, because we're fully remote, there's a level of self-accountability, there's a level of initiative, but then also, because it's a customer facing role, how are you interacting with me during the interview? Surprisingly, there have been interviews where people have been incredibly unprofessional, where I would have been like, I can't have you sit with a customer if you are presenting yourself like this to me during an interview. And internally, we're pretty casual with each other. But if you are talking with customers, you do have to be professional. And if you're not taking the interview seriously enough, then there's a fundamental lack of trust during the early stages where you are supposed to put your best foot forward. And if the best foot forward is a lack of professionalism or even odd demeanor on the call, that is a little bit off-putting. I have to put myself in the shoes of customers and how would they receive that? And so there's that piece to it. And then in general, like, obviously, do we get along? Because if there's friction and kind of like incompatibility in how like it works and things like that, then it's not going to be mutually beneficial. But a lot of times it seems like the qualities that would make somebody thrive also seem to be compatible with the team as a whole. And so if they have the initiative, if they present themselves well, and that typically works really well within the team dynamic anyways. And so I haven't come across a case where I got along really well with them and they would have been great with customers.
Plus one to part of like the professionalism. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse on that part. What is interesting though is, are they still able to get their personality and uniqueness across and shine? Because there's some candidates where it's just like they just sound robotic reading through a resume, versus those who, whether it's through enthusiasm, through passion, through something, are just, they're able to still be genuine, be themselves. And I think that's a big part of our culture as well, is that like, I don't think anyone, like, aside from Matt, I haven't seen anyone else in like a button up collared shirt on calls. Like, we're all casual, laid back, we do our own thing. Not saying that that's representative of anything, but like, everyone's unique to themselves. They communicate well, but they also do it in the way that's natural to them. So I think that's a level of comfortability with yourself, with the topic or the function that you're getting into. And it's that you're going, like, you're not just saying platitudes because, you know, it's what I want to say. It's like you truly understand it. And so whether this was through resume or through the intro calls, this was something I saw with a number of the candidates. It's like, did they say they did something, or could they show me? So for example, like, one of the roles is community marketing manager. There were some resumes that just said oversaw our Facebook group. Like, cool. How did that go? Was it good? Was it bad? Did it grow? Did it shrink? Did you source any opportunities from it? I don't know what it is. So you have that side of it. And then you have the people who, they get into a call and they're just like, yeah, we had this really tough group, or this person who was just talking about us poorly online. I got on a call, I talked to them. Now they're our biggest champion. So there's that level of what did they do about it? But also you could hear, like, they got excited about it, because that's a big part of the role, is like, do you enjoy doing this? This is going to be your day to day. Like, I can pick up from how you're speaking about this, is like, is this something that you're like, yeah, let's go do it, this is what I'm signing up for? Just like, well, that's going to be part of the job that I have to do every day. So that's one of the parts. I want to stop on that one because I've already talked a bit, but there's a couple other interesting things that I saw along the way, in case there's anything in there first.
I mean, I'm curious about when it comes to interviewing, and then also we haven't really talked a ton about red flags or just like things that you've noticed in the application process in general. So I think this is a good thing for us to kind of just stay in this zone for a little bit of, yeah, what are some of these things that you're noticing as you are looking through applications, and then also as you're sourcing, and then also when you finally do get someone into an interview, what are those things that you're looking out for? Red and green flags, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Viv, we can go back and forth. We can each do like ping pong it.
Let's do it.
I'll do a green flag first, because I like to start on the optimism side. Selling yourself as a candidate. I've been surprised by the number of sourced candidates who have sold themselves harder for the role than by the applied candidates who were just kind of going through the motions. It's like, yeah, I did this, yeah, I did that, but I felt like I had to like pull them along the conversation, versus the source candidates who were just like, here's what I did. I can totally see myself doing this in Loxo, as you just described that. That makes me really excited. I can't wait to do it. Here's idea 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, they'll email text after. So it's really interesting to see that. And that's one thing I never would have thought going into this process. Like, how much do I weight that? But that does separate good from great candidates pretty quickly.
I wonder if that is because they were presenting themselves well enough. They had the right SEO, so to speak, where you were actually able to find them, and then they just basically communicated that back to you because they initially presented themselves well enough where they were findable to begin with.
Yeah, it was a combination. Some I found, most of these were, I'll call it like my mental recruiting CRM, like just people that I knew before that they were kind of like wishlist. I'd love to work with this person someday, or I know they worked with a former peer of mine, so they must be pretty good at what they did if they met their bar, so to speak. So it like that wasn't resume based or what I found in Loxo Source. I was kind of, I don't know, as I said, like mental recruitment
Network
CRM.
based kind of, yeah. I think that is an interesting point too, just like the double-sidedness of a personal brand. Like for recruiters, this is a really powerful platform for you to have a personal brand, because then when people are looking, they know they can come to you. When hiring teams know that they need to make a critical hire, they know to come to you. But then also from a candidate perspective, having a well-defined personal brand makes you be the person that people think about when they need this kind of person. So I think that makes a lot of sense. What about, I'm curious when it comes to that stage of the interview process, have you noticed anyone using AI or obvious cases of AI usage? That is one that we've obviously talked about a lot in theory, but have either of you guys seen any of that in the process? Because that's an area where things break down from that initial application / online interaction to the first interview, where someone kind of just can't keep the momentum going. So thoughts there?
Viv?
I don't think I've noticed anybody obviously using AI during the interview, but I have heard of cases where that has happened. And the main thing that I'm essentially looking out for is eye contact during the conversation. And because typically when there's AI involved, they have that somewhere else and they have to read, and there is a certain level of delay in their response. Because if I'm asking you a question and you know what you're talking about, you have that experience, you're going to come right back. Otherwise, you're going to try and buy yourself time and be like, that's a really great question, to be typing away, and then kind of like scrolling back and forth. And so that's like an easy way to kind of tell. And the way that I usually start an interview is I try to basically say, hey, this is like super like informal. We're just trying to get to know you. We want to see like who you are as a person, how you're thinking, how you would approach different things. And we basically just want to pick your brain with like a couple of different scenarios, not to like steal your like work or anything like that, but we just want to make sure that it fits within Loxo itself. There's no right or wrong answers. We just want to get to know you. And it's more so of like thinking through problems and how you would approach them and how you have approached them in the past. And so the way that I've been trying to ask it is, how have you solved, like, have you encountered something like this in the past? If so, what was the situation? Tell me how you dealt with it. you shouldn't need to ask ChatGPT for that, to be honest. And so I think it's sometimes the way that you phrase the question that either prompts somebody to go to ChatGPT and ask. It's like if I give you a hypothetical scenario, then you can type that into ChatGPT and get that. But if I basically ask, hey, like, have you dealt with something like this in the past? If so, tell me about it. If not, no worries at all. We're just trying to get to know you a little bit. And this is where I also look for integrity and honesty. If somebody really hasn't had that experience, that they will tell me. But if they then volunteer some kind of answer of like, this is how I would go about it, or I've had a similar situation where it's not exactly what you asked for, but I'm getting the same vibe of like the thing that you're trying to solve for, and this is how I went about it, if that helps. And so essentially, I'm kind of looking for, will they say, I have no idea? Because then that's an indicator of integrity. And you don't have to know everything when you're going into an interview, but if you can give me a little bit of an idea of, yes, I have no idea, but this is how I would start solving it. That way I can see that you're proactive and you're honest and you have integrity, which fits really well in Loxo. But if you're not willing to admit that and you're pretending like you know something, you're asking ChatGPT, then we really don't know who are you, how can we upskill you? Because Loxo does want to upskill people, but there are certain requirements that if it's a founding role, like for the marketing team, you have to have that experience, but we're going to upskill you on all things Loxo, recruitment and things like that. You can learn that, And so part of that is just figuring these things out. And I think that's a way to avoid it. But AI is definitely out there, and I don't know how I would try and incentivize and encourage candidates to not use it and just really show up as they are with what they know and what they don't know and just be upfront about it.
I'm worried. It's I've seen a couple different interesting things with the AI side. So we have some questions that I asked. Like, first question, why are you interested in joining Loxo? Very straightforward. Lex, I know this one's close to your heart. The amount of M dashes that I have seen in it used properly, because I know there have been candidates I've spoken to with like journalism backgrounds, and I'm like, you're gonna cringe at the way that I use a dash. I don't use a proper M dash. I do like word space, just the single dash space, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not gonna talk about that. Versus how it's actually used. I'm just saying people do use it properly, but it's not a giveaway, but that's one part. And the number of times that I've seen Loxo referenced as specifically a forward-thinking organization, I'm like, wow, that is amazing how often Loxo is being categorized with that very specific word. So that to me is throwing up a little bell where I'm like, okay, like that's fine. But the discrepancy comes between question 1 and question 2. Why are you interested in joining Loxo? And then I ask, next question is very personal. What are you the most proud of? It could be work related or personal. And I can very quickly see 2 different writing styles. I can see 2 different ways that they communicate. So I don't care if you use AI. At the end of the day, that's fine. What I want to know, and kind of builds off your point, Viv, is who's doing the thinking here? Is ChatGPT doing the thinking and you're spewing that out? Or are you thinking and go to ChatGPT to help you organize it, construct it, figure out the best way to communicate it? So AI is here. Like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't use that. That'd be dumb to say that, more or less. But that's been a really interesting one. And there was a candidate who put at the bottom of their application, and like, anything fun for me to know about you, they basically said, written by ChatGPT, PS, written by ChatGPT, edited by me. So I was like, that's kind of like, to your point, integrity, having a little fun, saw their personality come through with it. So that was kind of neat to see. And I know we used to talk about this a little bit. I used to be a stickler for typos in resumes. I'd be like, you don't pay attention to detail. Now I'm just like, oh, they wrote this. Good on them.
This was a real human.
It was a complete 180 flip. Yeah, it's wild. But I'm just like, okay, like, I appreciate that now. So you can see the human side through it as well. So yeah, I don't know. Just insights on AI more so than any hard lines in the sand for me there.
And we're big fans of AI at Loxo. I mean, I think majority of us use Gemini in one way or another, and there's so many different ways to leverage it. So we definitely encourage it, but we also just want to get to know who you are, what you know, and using AI. That's a great thing, because those that are actually using AI, they know the capabilities and what AI is capable of doing and what it is not. And so it is a plus if you're using it, but if you're using it at the right time in the appropriate context. If you're using AI to answer the basic questions during an interview process, that's a problem. But if you say, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I would go about it, and this is where I would actually start leveraging AI, and you get really creative about how you would use AI to help you be better, faster, more efficient, whatever it might be, that's a bonus point. You can 100% mention that during the interview process. And if you then want to screen share and like demo it, go for it, right? That's great. That's initiative. That's being curious. That's going out of your own way to figure something out, because AI is here to stay and it's going to take over more and more. And so at this point, people should know what parts of my job can AI do, what parts can it not do, and how can I leverage AI to speed certain things up or actually take things to the next level when previously I was limited to certain things. And I've talked about this a long time ago when AI first came out and ChatGPT was like really, really big. And one of the things that I actually said is I like wrote up a full guide of how to use ChatGPT to tailor your resume to the specific job that you are applying for. And people were freaking out as like, people are going to falsify their experience. And I'm like, AI is not going to do that. If people want to write wrong experience or lie, they don't need AI for it. They don't need the internet for it. They could have just done it at interviews in person 150 years ago. AI doesn't make a difference in that. And resume writing is a skill. I am horrible at presenting myself in concise bullet points. I'm on the struggle bus. I will have a full-fledged conversation with AI to figure out how to distill it. But once I'm on an interview, once I'm actually talking to somebody, I can present myself, I can elaborate, I can give examples of experience. So you have to know what are your strengths and weaknesses. Where can AI help you with your weaknesses so that they're not that big? And then you can leverage that to actually be better and like really focus on your strength in other areas where AI really can't handle that just yet. So just even being aware and presenting that during the interview, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to be upfront and honest about it. That's about it.
Yeah, I think as long as you're using it a tool to help yourself accurately represent what you know, what you can do, what you're willing to learn, and like what that looks like, rather than using it to kind of, hey, craft the perfect resume for someone who would be the ideal fit for this role, then, you know, that's a different story.
Yeah. And
Okay,
like
so-
another and one
sorry.
like popular interview question is usually like, what is your biggest weakness? This is where you can actually say, you know what, I suck at resume writing, but I have figured out how to overcome that with ChatGPT and I can do them really well. And that has actually helped me because like whenever people are asking for a weakness, it's not really that they want to know like what your weak spot is. They want to know, how are you dealing with that, knowing that is your thing? So if you have a weakness, you also have to know how to overcome it. If AI can help you do that, that's something that you can bring forward because everybody is sucks at something. That's just normal. And it's how do you deal with that? How do you work with that weakness of yours?
Everyone sucks at something. That's going to be the the pull quote for this episode. Okay, one other fundamental difference that I think, Sam, you've noticed specifically when it comes to proactive sourcing versus applied is salary information. On these 3 roles that we posted, there's no salary range listed. I'm curious about 1, your reasoning for not posting a salary, and 2, like what you found through going through this process as a result of that.
Yeah. Love-hate relationship with this one.
I know.
I'm a big fan of salary transparency. This partially comes from corporate policy, other different things. So yeah, when it comes to it on the inbound side, I mean, it's a very quick qualifier for someone to see like, okay, because you see the job responsibilities, but usually there are salary bands that typically align to experience levels or the value that you can bring or the responsibility that you will carry as an individual. So that's one thing where I've seen the whole range of wildly underqualified candidates to I've had people with VP titles come in. I'm just like, yeah, that'd be nice, but you're going to ask for more money than I probably make. And I know I won't be able to afford you. So that's something that it makes it hard, like not harder. It's just, it's more work where that comes down to company policy at the end of the day, what you're willing and not willing to share, how close you hold the cards to your chest in terms of, is that something that you want to use as a qualifier? Or is that something that you don't want to show because you want to bring in the widest range of people? So for example, one of the plus sides that has come out of this is I'm realizing as both the recruiter and hiring manager, recruiter Sam hates hiring manager Sam because recruiter Sam is tasked with finding someone who's early manager level, like customer marketing manager, product marketing manager. But hiring manager Sam is looking at candidates who are senior, director, head of level. And I was like, ooh, I like those. And so there's this big misalignment there with myself, which is always a fun one. But that's where I'm seeing, okay, well, I'm glad that in one instance that I didn't post the salary because I may not have gotten the chance to speak with some of these candidates over here. And so, Viv, this goes back to you and I all the time. Like, if I get 14 days in and I don't have the right candidates, like that I'm hiring manager Sam is accepting, it's like, well, it's probably because recruiter Sam is tasked with firing these lower people. And my expectation is the more experience. So pros and cons.
Yeah. And I guess like ultimately this is something where if you have the flexibility to kind of refine your expectations over time through this process, this makes sense. But then for people who have a little bit more rigidity in terms of who they're actually looking to find, that can be a good qualifying tool.
I think that's also founding role problems. Like if this was the second, third hire, 10th hire for it, it'd probably be much tighter, more constrained. But since it's like, we've got this overarching job to be done. And that's what I'm telling a lot of the candidates is like, I know what we want to accomplish as a company. We want to hire the very best person to solve that problem, and it's to choose your own adventure. I don't know the best path for you to take, so I'm not going to prescribe it to you. You're very good at what you do. You figure out that path to accomplish that goal. So that's where that comes in.
Yeah. Okay, final question I have for both of you guys is just around the idea of career pivots and how those fit into proactive sourcing versus, applied candidates. We touched on this a little bit, but any examples that you guys have from what you've seen so far, what kind of maybe outside the box roles you're looking at that relate to the ones that you're hiring for right now? Anything within that realm that you can share?
I could jump in on this one. So for the CS team specifically, especially like the account management side, we found that recruiters thrive in these types of roles, or even business development people that were in the rec tech space, as well as teachers, because they essentially have to do exactly what the job entails. It's just within a different audience. Instead of teaching kids in school, you are teaching customers on product adoption. But the skill of teaching and being able to distill something into bite-sized pieces that people can actually use and implement well, that is there. Whether you are teaching physics or a new software, it's pretty much the same. With recruiters, they have the industry background, they have the experience of being on the user side of an ATS, and so they have a different way of relaying that information because they know what they wish they would have known, and so they can kind of like flip that. Same thing with salespeople. Salespeople, they just usually are very quick on their feet in terms of figuring out what they need to know to be successful. And so they don't need to necessarily be an account manager or customer success manager in the past for a company that with like a similar background or even industry to be able to thrive in that. And even if somebody were to come from a similar role at a similar company, we would still have to teach them all things Loxo. And so that is not necessarily the requirement. And so we're mainly looking for the skills and being able to kind of interact with customers really well and teach them what they need to know. So in that case, we very much look for people that are interested in pivoting their career, but have the right background to be able to thrive in this kind of role. And this is also where I come in with a couple of other coworkers to really see what are your character traits? What kind of person are you? How are you presenting yourself on calls? How would you solve very real situations that we encounter with customers? And based on that, we then either recommend them where we say, these are the reasons why we're a little bit hesitant to potentially move forward with this particular candidate. And we could be doing this, but considering the candidates that we have, this one is probably a much better fit. And this is where career pivots are actually really good. But I would imagine for founding roles, like on your team, Sam, you can't really have someone that is doing a career pivot because they're the founding role. But I'd be curious to hear your take on this.
Yeah. Usually there's a level of experience, like they've kind of done the thing before. There is one that was interesting, and they're a high-level candidate for one of them. It's the community role. And so this individual has industry experience. They've been in the recruitment space. Rec tech space, and they didn't know that there was a marketing function that basically handles the stuff that they enjoy doing on the side. Like this person is a very outgoing individual where they partake in their local community to organize events, to bring people together, to lead, bring groups 20, 30, 40 people together, planning the venue, sending the invitation, getting the food figured out, coming up with the agenda. Like, oh, I didn't even know there was a marketing function until I saw the job posting for it. So that's kind of a career pivot in that sense where they didn't even know something like this existed. But to your point, it's not as common with it. They already had the underlying skill set. They just didn't know that mapped to a specific job, full-time job function.
There you go. Okay, anything else you guys want to say as we wrap just on, sourced versus applied, candidates, quality, experience, any other just kind of last thoughts to throw into the ring?
I feel like Viv always has a good last thought. I'm going to let her round us out.
I mean, from even my experience, I spend a lot of time with ChatGPT to figure out how I can present myself well for when I reached out to Matt about the Loxo position. And I think that worked out really well.
I mean,
And so I would say definitely leverage AI. So this is not to say like don't use it. In terms of like applicants for hiring managers and recruiters, I think this, like, especially Sam, you're like, I guess, dual personality struggling with
Jekyll
itself,
and Hyde.
recruiter self versus hiring manager self. This is a really good kind of conversation for recruiters and hiring managers to listen to so that they see both sides of the coin. And this is why, and we just talked about this the other day on the podcast, it's the importance of, as a recruiter, really collecting that data so that you can share that feedback with hiring managers. Because like you said, initially you like have this particular salary range, but that will then automatically eliminate people that are above that with way better experience, but then you never would have had a chance to talk to them. And that in of itself was a learning opportunity for you to figure out, what am I actually valuing? Because when you're starting out a search as a hiring manager, you have a very vague vision. You think it's specific enough. But then as you're starting to have these conversations with good and with bad candidates, you start to unintentionally, unconsciously identify the things that you're actually valuing. And that's what helps you narrow it down. And so as a recruiter, you should be talking to a variety of candidates that fit within the role and slightly outside of it, so that you can give a full market picture to hiring managers. And then you can also say, well, if you like this type of caliber person, this is what they're actually looking for, so that you give them like a holistic view of the market. And then as a hiring manager, if you're listening, you have to know what you want and you have to be open-minded to the recruiter. And this is also where you have to make sure you're vetting your recruiter, that they will give you this market insight. Mm-hmm. And there's a really great ATS CRM called Loxo that on the jobs reporting page, it gives you all of that info. So yeah.
Sounds like a vibe coded tool. I don't know. Might pass on that one. But yeah, that calibration period that you were talking about there is so, it's not frustrating. It's not like the time spent in it is so worth it if you realize what you're doing to figure out, like, on paper, yes, this sounds good. It's like going from theory to practice. Like, what are the things that's like, okay, double underline this. This is super important. Cross that out. Not as important. You have to go through that and talk to the people to really hone in on what it is that the org needs. So,
and hopefully this is an experience that can give both recruiters and hiring managers empathy for the position that the other is in. You know, you're experiencing it all within your own brain, the Jekyll and Hyde, but it is, you know, it's not coming out of nowhere. It's not resistance or mind changing. That's just kind of like for the sake of changing your mind. It's, you know, this process does bring out different things that you maybe didn't expect or see coming. And so having a bit of understanding around why those changes are taking place, I think helps make it a little bit easier to stomach them. And hopefully they're all leading to the best possible result.
Mm-hmm. And for recruiters, if you're submitting candidates that you think are the right fit and you just keep getting no's with no good reason from the hiring manager, it's probably because they're in the calibration phase. So be patient and try to, and we talked about this a little bit before, jump on a call with them and kind of like have them visualize what is the ideal candidate. Like, what is it like to have them in the office or Slack or Zoom or whatever it is, to really figure out what is it that you're really like visualizing and envisioning for that, especially now that you've seen a couple of candidates be pitched, so that you can almost like guide them through like a visualization meditation of the ideal candidates so that you can get the answers that you need to actually source the right candidates. That is one of the biggest friction points that recruiters have when they're starting to send over candidates and they keep getting no's without a good reason. It's the calibration phase.
Mm-hmm. This was fun. This was deep. This was a lot. Hopefully people listen to this one, because I think it's this might be one of my top 3 of all time. That's saying a lot. So
excluding guest episodes,
excluding guest episodes, yeah. Just obviously episodes where I talk way more than I should because I'm unqualified to talk on this podcast. Kidding. Well, Viv, Lex, appreciate you both joining for this. I don't know. We might have to do more of these. Bring some more team members on. Just do these different kind of like bigger, meatier conversations that bridge theory, practice, philosophy, and figure out what the heck we're going to call this series, because it's not tactical, it's not trending, it's not an interview. I don't know. Lex, you're the wordsmith of the group. I'll let you have the fun.
Trends that are topical.
Tactilosophy.
We
talked about this not too long ago.
Yes, the worst, ugliest word that might just end up being tactilosophy. Then we'll just have to come up with the day of the week to do it. It's not Tuesday or Thursday, because those days are taken when we drop these episodes already. So who needs alliteration? All right. Well, appreciate you both. As we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you like this episode but you're not sure where to go next, we do have a link to a similar one, and you can find that in the description within the episode. Good Lord. You can find that within the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform. If you're still listening, don't even worry about editing this out. I'm not going to edit this out because we're all human.
We're all human.
Full video episodes. What's that?
We all have things about us that suck, as Vivien said earlier.
This is a weakness. This is why we partner with a great podcast editing team. Full video episodes are available on YouTube. If you ever have questions, send them our way, podcast@loxo.co. And lastly, if you did love this episode, please make sure to leave us a quick rating in your podcast streaming platform. It only takes you 3 seconds, and it's going to help other recruiters like you to find us. So, all right, everyone, that's a show. That was a tactilosophy, something or another, whatever we want to name this, episode with Lex and Viv. Until next time, bye, y'all.